What is up everyone? Welcome to the first ever video on my new workbench. Now this little setup has got a long way to go, but I couldn't hold off any longer. I have to do what I want to do to these N64 consoles, and I'll explain what that is in just a second. But first of all, if you can hear any background noise, I'm so sorry. The bloke next door has decided to just start mowing his lawn just as I'm starting to record this video, but I have to get this recorded now. I really want to do it, and I've got a load of time to do this today. This is the day that I've dedicated to doing this, well, the morning. So yeah, I'm going to do it regardless of his grass cutting needs. So anyway, let's dive straight in and I'm going to explain what I'm going to do. So first of all, we have three consoles in front of me and I'm going to explain what each one is. This first one is a little bit funny looking to some of you who may not have seen my previous videos. This is a custom painted white N64. Don't worry, it's still in really nice condition, it's just very dirty from the move. It does need a good clean. This was my main N64, my original N64 that I decided to take apart and spray paint years and years ago now, probably back in 2009, something like that. Yeah, so this is a normal charcoal grey console, just like this one, but it is spray painted white. We are not going to do anything with this today apart from steal the expansion pack. So we're going to move this one out of the way. This comes right at the end of the video, but I needed to have it up here so that I could take away the old expansion pack. Next up we have, actually, let's go to this one first. Next up we have this. This is not to be confused with a Funtastic console. This is its own console, which is not part of the Funtastic series. In the UK and in Japan and I believe other parts of Europe, we were lucky enough to get this really cool N64 with a clear blue top and a clear white bottom, and it came with a certain Mario bundle as well as sold on its own, I believe. This is quite a nice console, and I do have a complete collection of this console that I managed to get off eBay for a good deal. It came with the four blue and white controllers, which are quite hard to find sometimes. And this is the N64 that I want to be using in my living room. But there is a little problem. That's where this N64 comes in. This is a charcoal grey N64, regular console, nothing special about it. I bought it second hand, I believe from a charity shop or something like that, for a couple of quid. And that's what's allowed me to be able to take the plunge and make this video. This N64 has been taken apart before. As you guys can see, there's a piece of sellotape in the back there, and it's actually holding the system together because the system was never screwed back together properly, and I'll show you just how easy it'll come apart in a second. That's how the system came to me, with no screws in it whatsoever. A little bit weird, but it was so cheap that I don't mind taking this apart and using its motherboard. So, why do I need to do a motherboard swap? By the way, that's what I'm doing. I'm swapping the two motherboards in these systems. Why do I need to do it? Well, famously, the Funtastic series of N64 does not support an S-Video output, at least in the PAL region. I'm not too sure about NTSC. I want to use my N64 with S-Video because at the moment, without further expense and further modification to my consoles, I don't have a better option. When Ultra HDMI becomes readily available, I will probably take the plunge if I can save up and get it done. But right now, I want to get something better than composite without spending any money, and S-Video is my only option. I have an NTSC N64 downstairs, an NTSC-J N64, which is outputting S-Video natively to my S-Video switch, and I want this PAL N64 to do the same, so that I can play my games in glorious S-Video quality. So, as I say, famously, Funtastic series N64s do not output S-Video, and I thought this would be an exception because it is not a Funtastic series console, but unfortunately it shares more in common with the Funtastic series than it does with the Charcoal Grey. Charcoal Grey, native S-Video output. This one, no native S-Video output. Bit of a shame, but that's what we're here to solve today. So this isn't exactly a complicated procedure. This isn't a modification of any kind. I suppose it is a modification to the console, but in theory what we're doing is just swapping one entire console for another and giving it a new casing. So it's not really a mod in the sense that it's any kind of customization to the original hardware. We're fully sticking with the original hardware. And what I do hope to do is put this motherboard back into this casing, find some replacement screws eventually, and then I can sell this one on to someone who will enjoy it, obviously mentioning that it has a different motherboard inside of it, just in case they wanted to use S-Video. I have to be honest about that sort of thing, because I want everyone to have a nice experience, especially with my favourite console that I'm very attached to. I wouldn't want to sell anyone an N64 and not, outline some of the history that I knew about it. So, first things first, we're going to put this console to the side as well. We are going to get the motherboard out of this one. So this is an N64 console. Of course, you will need a game bit to get into it, but we won't need one yet because this has no screws in it. So first things first is removing the good old jumper pack here. Now the jumper pack is one of only two things holding this console together. That was the first, and the second I showed you earlier, that is that piece of sellotape on the back. So because it's just sellotape, I can rip it off. There we go. And I can just lift the top of the console off like that. That is crazy. Why someone was in here before, I have no idea. We may be able to find out when we dig deeper. Let's take a little look. So here is the system. This system is incredibly small. Look at the size of my hand there. The whole console is basically on a single board design, just like a load of these retro consoles. There is no extra hardware whatsoever. Of course, back in the day, you would have no need for any kind of drives. This was a cartridge-based system, so the slot is directly on the motherboard. There's no need for a CD drive, there's no need for a hard drive, there's no need for a modem, there's no need for anything that would even come close to any kind of external, anything off of the primary logic board. No need for any of that, so it's all on one board. And this big metal thing here is actually a heatsink, or more of a heat spreader. So this has direct contact with the chips below, I'll show you that in a second, and it just dissipates the heat. And of course on the top casing there is some slight venting here, which I assume would get hot after maybe weeks and weeks of play, but the N64 is notorious to be such a cool running console. It doesn't even need the cooling that it has. It's an extremely reliable system, which is one thing that I do like about it. I always feel as if it won't let me down. So let's take a little look at what these screws are. I believe these are little Phillips. Whoever was in here before seems to have done the screws up fairly tightly. I've had to go through a selection of a few different screwdrivers to find one that is suitable for getting these loose. But they are now coming, which is good. Now, in terms of putting these back together with all the screws in the correct places, I'm not 100% sure about lengths and different types. I honestly can't remember from last time how many different types there are. But we will see, we will try and have some kind of organisation. As I've been building my workbench together here, I don't have any kind of parts tray or anywhere to store screws. Bloody hell. There we go. That was a tough one. Yeah, so I don't have any way of organising screws, so I'm just going to have to wing it and hope for the best. But as long as it goes back together tidy, that's all I care about. This is a standing job, this is, folks. This requires the effort of standing. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, I did test this console to double check that it has S-Video output and that it is fully functioning. I took some footage of it, so I'll just pop that on the screen right now. As you can see, this console is outputting S-Video. I don't know if you can tell on camera, you probably can't. But the quality is decent. I'm having a little bit of an interesting issue with my switch, my S-Video switcher. I'm not sure if it's a temporary thing, and once you boot into a game and actually start playing, it's fine. But any kind of splash screen that comes up at the beginning that has too much white or a very, very bright colour will actually cause the S-Video switch to temporarily lose sync, which is quite annoying, and I hope it's not an issue that continues. I hope it's something that I can solve. But yeah, the main thing is for now that the console itself is working and outputting S-Video. I can confirm that. So we have all of these screws on the top plate out, bar one. Can't get it out at the moment, don't want to strip it, so I will look at that more carefully in a minute. Let's take out some of these screws that I believe are going to start to be different sizes, which I am Yes, indeed, correct. They are bigger, so I'm going to have to remember where these go. The good thing about filming this sort of thing is if you're desperate, you can always look back at the footage. That's a long one. That's considerably longer than all the others. Then we have two either side of the expansion pack slot here. These ones are considerably smaller, but definitely longer, so I should remember where they go. I assume that is to increase stability when yanking out expansion packs. That goes right through the main chassis itself. There we go. The second one is also the same. So, using a little visual here, we have two black screws, which I managed to completely overlook the first time. One nice thing about this is they're all Phillips. I guess because you've got the game bit security on the outside, there'd be no need to add additional security on the inside, but I'm not going to speak too soon. There may be some weird screws lurking underneath. I honestly can't remember from taking this apart last time. So these two black screws. Now we have some screws that are on this sort of secondary plate. This is the top plate, the main heat spreader. Now we've got this lot to contend with down here, which again, different sizes. By far the beefiest screws that we've taken out of the system so far are the ones either side of the cartridge slot. This is, I assume, to increase stability again, just as I was saying about the expansion pack. But you know, games are going to be thrown in and out of this system constantly by kids, so it's important to make it strong. Okay folks, we have what looks to be nearly all of the screws out. We have two down here in this little gap. So there are holes in the heat spreader to allow access to these ones. These are the same as the screws that the other ones that we just took out, which is nice. So at the moment we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different types of screws that have come out of this system already, which is interesting, but I'm not going to complain. Now, it's reached the stage where I really need to get this screw out. So I'm just going to pause for a second while I try and battle my way with that one. Success, folks, success. Just a little bit of perseverance and we are there. So that screw is out. How are we feeling now? Okay, so this main heat spreader comes off, which is cool. So I believe we have to undo these screws as well. No harm in doing so. And the whole lot should come off in one. Now the board is 100% loose from the system, which is cool. It also makes the AV port cover cave in, so that's something to keep in mind. Let's put the case into one side. Now, unfortunately, due to the design of the board and the little heat sinks and everything, we do not actually need to disassemble this any further, guys. Here we have an N64. This is how big an N64 is, okay, outside of the casing. We don't need to disassemble any of this. It would be, oh wow, actually, it just lifts off, does it? So I could show you. Ah, yeah. I was just about to say, we put this in as one piece, but if it just comes off, then I'm happy to take it off. So we can take a look at the board. This is an N64 board. Let's take a closer look. So here's a nice closer look at the board. So I don't have the greatest knowledge of the N64 board, but I'm going to combine a little bit of random scattered information in my brain with a little bit of guesswork, and I'm going to take you through a few things. So of course, this is the memory under this one. You can tell because it's in line with the expansion pack slot, which is of course just a glorified RAM upgrade. So it's 4 megabytes as standard. The expansion pack will give you an additional 4 megabytes, giving the system a total of 8 megabytes. I believe on these charcoal grey models there are 2 chips below this heatsink, and I actually, let's have a look. Yeah, I can just about see 2 separate chips. There will be 2 megabytes each, of course. Over here is the 64-bit CPU, the famous 64-bit CPU under this one, I believe. And here we have our graphics chip, or our reality co-processor, or whatever the heck it is. Not 100% sure about this one. It's the sort of information that I read up on and it leaves my brain straight away. Other little miscellaneous things, I mentioned the expansion pack slot. Here is the cartridge slot, of course, which is identically mirrored on the bottom of the system for the expansion slot, primarily used for the 64DD, but also for various development kits and pieces of hardware, etc. Here we have the very, very bonkers power switch. And what do I mean by bonkers? I mean that it switches. If you can look in the side here, you might not be able to see, it switches about 5 or 6 different points on the board simultaneously. It's like a 100 billion pole switch, which is kind of hilarious. You probably wouldn't see something like that today, but maybe you would, I don't know. Over here we have here it is, the reset button. I was like, where the heck is the reset button? There it is. Here's the LED, of course, the power LED, the 4 controller ports, power in, AV multi, and a load of other things that I don't know what they are. So this is 1996 Nintendo. There is a Nintendo 64 motherboard. This is the motherboard that will be going into my blue and white N64. So what I'm going to do is put the little protective shielding, little metal covers here back on, and we'll get it ready to pop into the other system. By the way, folks, just before I put these back on, I just want to show you that these are just little blocks. As you can see, you can move them on the chips. It's just got some thermal material underneath. I believe they're thermal pads. So I'm not going to take them off, but yeah, that's how they're held on, and they're basically just sort of like to make up the height between this and the heatsink assembly. But I've seen the N64 running without any kind of heatsink or anything like that, and people just can't get it to crash, even when the system is overclocked. So this cooling is definitely over the top for what it is, but really good. You know, it contributes to making the system extremely reliable, as I was saying. So yeah, I'm going to leave everything as it is in here before I mess anything up, because this is the only board that I have going to spare in my little cheapo N64 that I picked up here for this project. Yeah, we'll put these back on and delve into the other one. So with one N64 disassembled, it's time to disassemble the next one. So putting our board to one side, let's bring this one over into the frame. So here is the system that I'm going to be using. Now, of course, to get into an N64, in case anyone is not aware, you need what is referred to as a Nintendo game bit. Now, as a warning, there are 2 different size game bits available. One for the console and one for the cartridges. Same goes for the whole line of Nintendo products, I believe. I know this is used in Super Nintendo N64. I'm not sure if it went up into the GameCube era, but I believe it did from memory. Yeah, it's just a special little bit that is sort of exclusive to Nintendo. So it's kind of handy if you've got one of these screwdrivers that you can swap bits. Makes life a lot easier, and it allows you to at least get into the system. Yeah, this is size number 1, and this is size number 2. The ones for the game cartridges are notably smaller, if you can see that. I'm not sure what the sizes are meant to be. I don't know the size in like millimeters or whatever, but yeah. Now, these aren't the nicest screws to actually use. They're not the nicest bits to use. They're kind of awful, really. But they get the job done eventually, and as long as you've got the bit, you can't go far wrong. Now, these screws are actually so rubbish that people do, instead of paying the £5 or whatever it is for a game bit, people do make their own out of various random bits and bobs that you may have lying around the house. I've never looked into that sort of thing because I just went and bought the bit. But if you're into the DIY side, you could try that. Of course, when taking apart an N64, these little feet come off separately from the bottom. So when putting back together, it's nice to remember to put those back on because they do finish off the console nicely. So there's the 2 feet. And there are just screws all over the bottom of this thing that you need to take off. Okay, that is the last screw. Now all that's left is the jumper pack, and we should be able to disassemble this console. But hey, there she goes. Jumper pack out of the way. N64 top cover off, and as you can see, pretty much identical to the other one. In fact, wow, okie dokie, not identical to the other one. This is a fairly different design here, folks. Way less screws on the main heat spreader. The board underneath looks the same in terms of the amount of screws. A little bit of a difference here. Yeah, let's dig in further and see how many differences there are. Quite interesting. You've got little indentations here in there. Maybe they don't have the blocks on the chips. I'll be intrigued to see about that. Well, I'll say one thing, guys. After taking apart two of these, I thought I'd probably learn the screw layout, etc. But this one, considerably different screw types. Well, not considerably, but you know, different layout for all of them, different quantity. Yeah, quite surprised by that. This is a much later N64, of course. But anyway, let's take a look at removing this. Yeah, check it out, guys. Totally different design here. We have done away with the blocks. No more blocks on the main two chips here, but we instead have the indentations built into the heatsink and the thermal pads. This is indeed thermal material on the bottom, so I'm not going to fiddle with that too much. We're going to leave that intact. I did drop a screw into the case when doing this, and there it is. So that's okay. Can pull that out. Now then, let's take a look. I've left one screw in. There's always one. There we go, there's that one out. Now we can pull out the motherboard as a whole, and we can see, oh, I've got another screw rattling around in there. Oh wow, that makes sense. One of the screws had a little nut on it. I thought that was the case, or at least two of them do, yeah. One from underneath there. They didn't need to be taken out, so I can put those back in. But I'm going to have a little inspection of this and see if it's going to be possible to do this transfer with the screw mount points, etc. And I'm going to, ooh, there it is. I'm going to screw these nuts and screws back in. So guys, there are quite a few design changes. So what I've decided to do, this is the old board in the newer system. This is the S-Video board. What I've decided to do is take the two long cartridge screws and the two long expansion pack screws, because they will hold in the motherboard. I've decided that I'm going to try to put them in, see if that lines up, and if they do, any other screw on top of that is a bonus. So here we go. And I tell you what, guys, I tell you what we'll do, because there's a massive different quantity, we will stick to using one set of screws. I may come to regret this, but I'll give it a go anyway. I'll use the old set of screws because they are more likely to line up. They're more likely to be the same with this board rather than the casing of the console, if you get what I'm trying to say. So these are going in absolutely fine, holding in the main cartridge slot here. Now we have the two littler long ones that go either side of the expansion pack slot that we're going to put in. Now we have this one slightly longer screw, which I believe goes in this single gap here. I was incorrect when I said there should be a screw in the other side, guys. There should not be a screw in the other side. That one is in. That one is in and definitely correct, because that is going into that one. Okay, cool. This one is actually for one of the gain bit screws to screw in this way, so that the one of those exterior screws holds in the board as well, which is cool. So I've finally figured out that. Next easiest thing to pop in are the 4 silver coloured screws for the power and AV jacks. there we have it. There's those 4 silver screws back in, and it's important to remember if this piece of plastic falls out from the AV section to put that back in before putting the console back together, because it would be really frustrating if you got all these screws in the motherboard and then you'd forgotten that piece of plastic. Next up, I think it's a good idea to get some of these little bits and bobs back in their places. I'll tell you one thing, guys. Tell you one thing. I may have screwed up here. Get it? May have screwed up in the sense that, yes, these 3 screws that I put in the front need to come up after that plate and whatever the heck this is, which I've totally forgotten temporarily, but not to worry. Okay, that goes there, I remember. That goes there because that grounds the slot to this, and then this goes there. That's okay, folks, that's okay. I'll just have to remove these ones. That's not a massive deal. Lucky I looked back, guys. I've made a crucial error while screwing this bit in. No wonder it's not sitting in quite right. That little tiny piece that I put in first needs to be above this main cover. So this has got to come off yet again. So this little doohickey actually goes on the top. It's this one first. There we go, that sits down properly now. Just about. Then it's this one there. Kind of tricky to spot just from pictures, but I believe that's it. I can confirm that this is correct, guys. I really have a feeling that it is. So now that these are in, we have actually made really good progress because we have minimal screws left. Minimal screws, which is always good. Now, we have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws left that I know of for the outside of the board here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 screws that are for the heatsink cover. But then we have 2 other screws that I can't remember where they've come from. But I've got an inkling that they go in there, so I'm going to keep that in mind. So what I'm going to do now is put the heatsink top on. That way. Again. Layers. Layers, 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 layers. Okie dokie, that's those. Now then, we have 2 of these, and I've got a feeling these go in here, but I could be wrong. That felt quite correct. If feeling is anything to go by. There we go, there we have that one. So, screw holes, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of those. Fantastic. So, I'm going to put all the little ones in. This is working great. Really well so far, but I'm not going to celebrate just yet. Alright guys, we are now on the home stretch. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws remaining, and I believe I know where they go. So these are the main screws for the corners. We could run into some issues here with alignment, because I believe these go down through into the case. Let's do this one first. I know that goes there 100%. So we should be pretty good. There's one down, 4 to go. Here's this one. 2 down, 3 to go. Here's this one. 3 down, 2 to go. And now, the only area in which we have left, we have 2 remaining screws, 2 remaining screw holes. Why is that continually screwing? I've got no idea. It is getting there, I think. That's continually screwing. Let's just make sure that that's stable in there. It's not going to drop out. That's definitely not coming out anyway. Don't know why it's still spinning. Anyway, 2 remaining screws, 2 remaining holes. I thought these were different, but we will soon find out. There is 1. Oh guys, the excitement I'm feeling right now. There is 2. You know what this means? This means that we have successfully managed to swap a motherboard on an N64 between two different models, and we have no screws remaining. That is the motherboard completely back in place. The old motherboard in the new N64 case. We may have some problems the other way around, but judging by this, I don't think we will, because all of the screw differences must be purely on the surface of the board, not impacting on casing at all. So one thing of note that I did not use were these nuts, so I'm going to have to remember to use those on the next console, because they must be something to do with the difference in this board. But anyway, that's that. Let's reassemble it and see if it goes 100% back together. I am so pleased about this, folks, because it means that I've got a fully, screwed together. It's always nice to have it 100% screwed together after you've been fiddling with it. Let's get some of these screws and let's do her up. I'm so excited. Oh man, the game bit is such an awful bit. I'll say one thing about putting an N64 back together, guys. Some systems, a system that I've taken apart recently is the Dreamcast, and the difference between the Dreamcast and the N64 in terms of the way that it screws together is the N64 has an incredibly loose fitting lid when you put it back on, and the screws themselves, these big long screws, the 5 long screws, or there's 6 of them, sorry. The 6 screws really torque the lid together. They really drag it in, and make the console as one. So this system is kind of crucial to have all of the screws in place to avoid it from creaking and stuff like that. To prevent it from creaking, to avoid creaking. Whereas something like the Dreamcast, the casing in the way that it's designed is incredibly tight fitting together, and the 4 screws are there to just make sure it doesn't fall apart, obviously. So here are the feet. I want to make sure these go on nicely and properly. How do they work? They just slot in like that, okie dokie. And again, even more added strength here at the front for this system. The fact that the foot is being used as like a giant washer just shows that how solid it is at the front here. I mean, these N64s, I know I've been going on about it, but they're practically indestructible. The last screw in the bottom. Excellent stuff, guys. I cannot express to you guys how pleased I am to reassemble my N64 with 0 leftover screws. That is an achievement, I think. So let's do the finishing touch, and that is, of course, moving the expansion pack from my previous main N64 to my new main N64, because I'm the proud owner of a grand total of 1 expansion packs. So there is that. There is that. Do you know what I say, folks? I say it is time to test out this system for S-Video, functionality of the expansion pack, and generally, does it still work after I've been fiddling? Let's go down, stick Donkey Kong 64 in, and see what it does. Okie dokie, folks. Here we have the newly modified N64 hooked up. We've got Donkey Kong in because that's a game that requires the expansion pack, so that lets us test the functionality of the expansion pack as well. What I'm going to do is change the input on the TV live on camera so you guys can see that this has truly worked with no trickery. So as you can see, S-Video there, and the S-Video input on this TV is on the side. You can see this nice big thick S-Video cable going in. That's coming from the switch. You guys will see all of this in Living Room Setup Part 2, which is currently being filmed. The N64 is in input 1, and input 1 is selected on the switch. Let's give it a go and see if it worked. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay.
Well, there we have it, guys. 100% success. That is a blue and clear N64 outputting S-Video. So now that we know that that works, I'm going to put this N64 back together. Now, I'm not going to make you guys sit through this tedious process. I'm just going to do it, and hopefully I can use all of the screws once again. And hope it doesn't take too long, because I'm dying to get some N64 gameplay in, because I've been having withdrawal symptoms. But yeah, I'm going to put this one back together, use as much as I can, and then we will hopefully have another working N64 with slightly less functionality, but it shouldn't bother too many people. This will still do composite and RF. So yeah, you can probably hear the excitement in my voice. I've left the other console downstairs hooked up. I'm going to quickly get this one back together. Well, everyone, that went much better than expected. I can almost confirm, I can 99.99% confirm that these cases are entirely backwards compatible. The differences are only on the surface of the board itself. Now, I have 2 screws and 2 nuts left over. They are from these holes, I believe, because everything else went in great. But in order for me to put these in, I'd have to take the whole lot back out and do it from underneath, because it's a nut. So that's not something I'm prepared to do. I have this box of little bits and bobs in here. This is where I keep my game bits. I also have a load of LEDs in here, and also a little strip of LEDs that I've soldered together for some reason, and I was going to do something with, and some wire in there. I'm not too sure what that was all about. But anyway, there's a few little spares for N64s in there, screws wise. So what I'm going to do is pop these in as well, because this console certainly does not need it. I mean, the plate is, you know, there's hardly any give in it whatsoever. So what we're going to do is pop this back on, and one day, you know, if I ever open this up again, one day I may pop those back, you know, but at the moment, after spending, oh wow, hang on a second, folks. Have I done it again? Oh, I've done it again, look. Look at that. Okay, so we are finally ready to put this on and put this in and put that on and have ourselves a nearly put together Nintendo 64. No screws in the corners, but that is that. So I'm going to call that video a 100% success. I am so happy with the outcome, guys. Again, got this N64 really cheap. Had an S-Video motherboard in it, donated that to my blue and white clear N64, and it means that my lovely system here, this special N64, remains completely functional with all of its capabilities, including S-Video output. So that is a brilliant thing to have got done. It now means that I can play N64 on my main setup in nice S-Video quality. Of course, this isn't a huge leap over composite, but until I get something else, like Ultra HDMI mod or something in the future, this is the best I can get at the moment. So let's do a little finishing touch. Let's pop that on. Check that out. Boom. That like that. There we go. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It was something a little bit different. Please leave your feedback down below in the comment section. If you have any questions about N64s or whatever, feel free to fire away. And as always, I will see you in the next video.